The third station of the cross, Jesus falls the first time. On the first Sunday of Lent, the Gospel took us into the temptation of Jesus in the desert. At the end of the temptation, it says that the devil departed from Jesus for a time. Throughout the Passion, Jesus is continually tempted by Satan. The temptations are not for worldly wealth, passion, power, or honor. Rather, Satan is continually tempting Jesus to save himself from the suffering. As Jesus makes his journey from the Praetorium in Jerusalem to Golgotha, where he will be crucified, he bears the weight of the cross. The cross is not just a physical beam from which Jesus will hang. It is the weight of all that Jesus carries with him along the way. Jesus bears the lies of those in power who falsely testified to scapegoat the Savior and placate their guilt. He carries the imprint of Judas's kiss of betrayal. He carries the abandonment of his disciples. He carries the deep sorrow of his mother Mary, experiencing and witnessing her son's suffering. Christ carries the sins of his followers, his tormentors, and of each of us. Physically worn from the wounds that tore his skin with whips and a crown of mockery, Jesus falls the first time. The wood's weight was heavy, but the spiritual burden was unimaginable. As Jesus' human body collapses to the ground, he sees the feet of the crowd and hears the voices above, jeering and taunting him. Jesus knows he can escape his snare and free himself from any further pain. Jesus also knows that he could give in to the pain and go no further. The Lord, our Savior, does neither. Knowing the enormous suffering that is ahead of him, feeling the pain of the beatings and mocking, Jesus continues the journey of love. Jesus falls to show us how to rise again. And rising from the ground, Jesus says no to the temptation of avoiding the pain. When we are following God's will, we too will suffer at times. We will be rejected by some. We may even be lied about or betrayed. When we find the pain of discipleship hard, when we are spiritually or even physically at our lowest, Jesus has been there, and Jesus meets us there and embraces us in his love. Jesus sent his Son into the worst of our suffering, into what scares us the most. Jesus' first fall reminds us that we are not at the end. We turn to God. We ask him to lift us up, because our fall reminds us that we do not have to walk through suffering alone. We continue on the journey step by step, knowing that Jesus has walked the way of suffering himself. Jesus will never leave us to walk the road alone. He is with us, and he guides us moment by moment and step by step. God doesn't take away our suffering, but he enters into it during the Passion, and he enters into our suffering today. As Jesus enters into our suffering, he sanctifies it and he works through it. So when we, like Jesus, fall under the weight of our crosses, we can resist the temptation to run away in denial or crumple under the weight's cross. We will not remain desolate and worn, but we will rise with Jesus and continue the journey of faith, wherever it may lead.